The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Well, perhaps you were watching, perhaps you weren't, but I think for those of us that were, all we can really say is blimey, it has been quite some day here in Washington in every conceivable respect. We've just heard Donald Trump's inauguration address, very different in some ways from his first, not so different in others. But what is it all going to mean in reality? The rest of the world will certainly have been watching, asking itself the same question. Welcome to Talking Politics USA. Well, after a remarkable day here, who better to join me to try and make sense of this than Robert Moore, our correspondent here of many years standing, covering his fifth inauguration, and Heather Nauert, who you will know by now, but who worked in the previous Trump administration. I mean, why don't we just start? Initial reaction to the day and the speech. Heather, you first.
I think really an exciting day covering a remarkable comeback politically for the president. No one would have thought 4 years ago that he would go on to win again. And it was, we've seen here the pageantry, all of that, the music, beautiful, incredible. It shows America at her best, and the peaceful transition of power from Democrats to Republicans. And then President Trump, of course, highlighting that he intends to be a peacemaker and a unifier in his country, and thanking the broad coalition of voters that elected him this year, not your typical Republicans.
Robert, he said he was going to put stars and stripes on Mars. He said he was going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I bet that's going down well in Mexico. I mean, let's deal with your initial reaction, and then let's just kind of we can maybe get into the reality of what that's.
I think anybody who has covered, the last 4 years, really from the moment of the attempted insurrection on January the 6th, 2021, through the Trump court cases, I'd echo kind of Heather's point, which is it's just an unbelievable scene to watch the 45th president become the 47th, because it is resilience on a scale that is kind of off the charts. I mean, there was a chance, certainly, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, thought there was, that Donald Trump at this moment would be behind bars in a federal prison. And yet there he is, being sworn in under the great rotunda of the Capitol, the very building where his supporters ran amok just over 4 years ago. So for me, it's just this extraordinary juxtaposition to where Trump could have been to where he is now. Now he's at the apex of political power. Everybody, in corporate America, cultural America, all the business leaders, the tech titans, all kissing the ring.
Right there in the middle. That was the extraordinary thing to me about it. There was the Trump family right next to him, but right amidst them and his cabinet were the tech titans. Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, of course.
Even in the front row, while his cabinet secretaries were in the back row, so just two rows behind.
That is the headline. It's this unbelievable display of power, not just political power, but cultural power too. And the question becomes, this is going to be the 4-year adventure ahead of us, is how Trump exercises that power. Is it truly kind of cautiously and with an America First agenda, but trying to avoid foreign entanglements? Or is it a more antagonistic and bellicose America, where he's talking about taking back control of Panama, talking about wanting at least some control of Greenland, and tariffs against China and Canada and Mexico? All of this has to play out, and we can't know which way he goes, but this is the adventure of the next 4 years.
I know we've commented on this a few times, but when you think back to 8 years ago when he was the 45th president, and we've said, haven't we, there was this sense the world was like, oh, America's made a mad decision, give it 4 years and they'll wake up. Completely different this time. He's back. he's all powerful, not just because it is remarkable to see American power on such raw display, and the rest of the world will have been watching. It's like unmistakable. It's a reminder that there is kind of no power in the world like American power still. I mean, China obviously a rising power, but that is the raw, brutal reality of it. And here is a guy who, despite having had a relatively narrow victory by some, I think won the popular vote by not that much, seems all powerful, and partly that's because of the tech titans and the feeling that absolutely anyone who's anyone in corporate America has bowed the ring. I mean, that to me is what's so remarkable about it. He's turned a relatively narrow election victory into a display of absolute power.
Instead of bowing to the ring, I would look at it a little differently. American corporations know that the president is capable of pretty much unlimited things, right? Reducing regulation, tax cuts, all of that. And these corporate CEOs want to be a part of that. And it's natural for them to do so. It's in their best interest. Also, many corporations have become far more liberal, some call it woke, over the past several years, using a lot of DEI initiatives, and now there's a big pushback on that. So they're kind of welcoming President Trump's inauguration by seeing a pushback on DEI initiatives where they can get back to focusing on business and making money rather than having to appease people.
I did wonder as I watched it though whether potentially the seeds of kind of MAGA's undoing might have been there today as well, in the sense that if I was the Democrats and I was thinking about what might carry some traction if things don't go quite that well over the next 4 years, is you might say it's a government of billionaires for billionaires. Look at them there. That now maybe things will go really well and that will become irrelevant, but that feels like if you were the Democrats, that might be where you would go, no?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Remember back during the campaign, we saw President Trump at the barber shop with all the African American men, and they're hanging out and they're having a good time. Donald Trump is very comfortable in those environments, and he really truly wants to help the average American. And I think we'll see more and more outreach, continued outreach, a focus on labor, our trade unions here. They say they're ready to work with the Republicans and Donald Trump. Donald Trump, of course, embraced them during the campaign, and that's something that's very different. Conservatives, Republicans tended to not get too cozy with the labor unions, and this time they are. So I see him as focusing on both.
I mean, America is perhaps slightly different in Britain in having, I think one might argue, a greater respect for wealth and all the rest of it, Robert. But at the same time, I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, I mean, are they massively popular figures? I don't know. Do people want to see them right there at the heart of power?
Well, I mean, that's an open question. I mean, I think they're not necessarily popular figures, but clearly their companies are vastly popular with young Americans. And, when we talk about how the Democrats are going to try and adjust to the new reality, I mean, the heart of their problem is that Donald Trump has reached deep into their own constituencies, into working class Americans, into heartland Americans, into Hispanic Americans, to male African Americans. So how they try and rebuild and confront this new age of Trump, I think is going to be difficult to assess. I mean, they're leaderless, they're demoralized. It's very difficult to see how they get equipped for the midterm elections. I mean, what is their message and who is their messenger?
Can I talk about some of the specific? I mean, he talked about renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I mean, do we take that seriously, or is that just a piece of mischief? He says he's going to force all federal maps to be reprinted with that. We were discussing earlier, weren't we, that I think that's quite a tricky thing for foreign leaders, because they'll all get asked by journalists, are you going to, in Britain, are you going to insist that British government maps are reprinted with the Gulf of America? And, goodness knows how Keir Starmer answers that one. But do we take that sort of stuff seriously, or is it just an indication of how he's going to shake things up?
That one in particular, I do take seriously. And I came out of the State Department, so I'm imagining being at my old podium in the briefing room, taking reporters' questions on that one. I think he's dead serious.
Okay.
And we can do it. We print maps in the United States government. They're the main map map printmaker, and I think you'll start seeing that.
You don't think it's an elaborate troll of his sort of,
not
political
that
foes?
One. I actually don't. Not that one. The Gulf of America.
Okay, well, let's deal with more substantive and potentially significant ones. Talks about taking back control, although, of course, it's a long time since America had direct influence over the Panama Canal. But, Panama's a sovereign country. That feels clearly the Panamanians are not going to be very happy about that. What does that look like in reality, do you both think?
I think what it looks like is an American companies controlling some of the ports, some of the infrastructure through the Panama Canal, so that we America can better secure it for our national. Sorry, I'm getting a little cold here. Interests, and that is key, because China plays an important role right now, just as China has done all around the world with its One Belt, One Road initiative, and this is a pushback on that. America is worried about what happens if China invades Taiwan, and is China going to attempt to close down our ports and other access points in the canal in Panama? Let me warm up here.
If you're listening to this rather than watching, I should point out that it's snow outside. We are outside, and it's a very, very clear and somewhat crisp and getting a little chilly day here in Washington.
Yeah, I think Heather is right. In a way, this is kind of Donald Trump announcing that he wants to try and arrest the ascendancy of China where it impinges on American national security interests. So what he's saying about Panama, he's also echoing about Greenland as well, which is he wants, American national security to be extended. And this is all part of this extraordinary power play that we have witnessed on this inauguration day. It is a display of power, the like of which seems to me to separate this from every other inauguration day I've seen. It's just how sort of high he has set the bar, that language, America's decline is over, the challenges we face will be annihilated, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, he said in one of his opening comments.
Yes, I did spot that. And
this sort of
grandiose.
Me neither, but it's just such a sort of grandiose claim. That it sets the bar incredibly high, and that may be where the Trump agenda begins to fall apart. He set the bar so high that if America has disappointing economic news, if China challenges the United States and succeeds in some areas, then people are going to ask, well, what was that? Were they two empty words at the inauguration?
There's a couple of more specifics I want to ask you about, but just on the point about the kind of language and the tone and capturing the mood of the day and the kind of raw power that was on display. I don't want us to fall prey to kind of unjustifiable hyperbole, but you think of presidents who seemed all powerful when they came in, Reagan, JFK, to pick by Clinton in his own way, perhaps even Obama. Did we witness something different today or not really? It felt to me different in tone and texture and the feel of it from any inauguration I remember, certainly in the recent past, but am I exaggerating that, and fundamentally it's the same thing? What do you both think?
My view is this was different. Partly because of the personality of Donald Trump, partly because of the improbability of his return to power. This is only the second time in the history of the United States that a defeated president has come back to win back the White House, but also because this is kind of a moment in not just in America but beyond, where sort of populist and nationalist leaders are suddenly sensing an opportunity. It's notable that the Argentinian president Javier Milei was here, the Prime Minister of Italy Meloni was here, Nigel Farage, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson were here. Familiar figures on the right in British politics.
Keir Starmer was not here.
Indeed. So this was more like a kind of a celebration of the populist right, and combine that with the language and the sort of talk about the Panamanian Canal and about America first being at the heart of every decision that will be made going forward. And combine that, Tom, with the fact that he controls the White House, the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court has got a conservative majority, and you begin to see why this is different in its contours than other inaugurations.
Well, and we've seen a total transformation in the Republican Party, a broad-based coalition. He earned more votes among young men, African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos than Republicans have previously. And so that's something here to stay, I believe, at least for the next 5 years or so. Hopefully the Trump administration looks at it. Vice President Vance will go on to become the next president 4 years from now. But Trump and many Republicans also see America as an America that has been in decline over the past administration. And perhaps you could say that about any administration, but we have seen record numbers of people crossing the southern border. President Trump calls it an invasion of America's borders. And I noted in his remarks today, he talked about how we're spending lots and lots of money overseas to defend other countries' borders, but yet not our own border. So that's something we will see a major focus on. Of course, we've talked about inflation and all the other issues that have kind of dragged America down over the past 4 years. And so we're going to try to, or the president is going to try to change all of those things and make America better again.
I want to ask you one thing, Heather. You worked at the State Department.
I did.
You know Rubio, you know many of the other senior people. You used to present a TV show with Pete Hegseth, the incoming defense secretary. Like, there's not many people at the senior level of this administration you don't know. Keir Starmer wasn't here. We've heard reports that Peter Mandelson, his ambassadorial choice, may be delayed or even possibly rejected by the White House, which would be a pretty remarkable thing to do. What is your impression? And here we are. I'm just going to interrupt us. This is Joe Biden and his wife, the outgoing president. If you're listening to this, I better, rather than watching, I better describe. This is Joe Biden and his wife leaving the Capitol building on the chopper, flying right over our head here. What a moment for them, eh?
That is the sound, if you're listening, not watching, that is the sound of the transfer of power.
It truly is. And it's not very often that the three of us would stop and look at that and just kind of be in awe of that show of American power and what is happening historically.
I mean, especially for Joe Biden, who came to this town as a 27-year-old, freshly elected senator, and has been in this town for 50 plus years. So, I mean, he's leaving with a legacy that I think will be argued about, but is certainly damaged by the fact that the one man he framed as an existential danger to America has actually taken the White House from him.
And what a brutal matter the transfer of power is. He had to sit there, Kamala Harris as well. They both had faces like absolute thunder. You noticed that when Donald Trump was talking. Well, you tell that story rather than me, because you spotted something that
sure.
The rest of us
Amy
didn't.
Klobuchar, who is the senator from Minnesota, who runs the Senate committee looking after the inauguration, she made a comment when she gave her opening remarks and said, "Look, this is about a celebration of a peaceful transfer of power," a pointed comment from her. And I noticed, a subliminal image of outgoing President Joe Biden crossing himself, as the good Catholic he is, making clear that, he now thinks that the future of American democracy is in God's hands, because he hasn't got confidence that Donald Trump will keep democracy alive in this country, which explains to you why Democrats are so dismayed, disheartened, and frankly alarmed at this moment, because throughout the campaign leading up to this election, they did regard him, and they said it outwardly, that he has, in their view, fascist tendencies. So can you imagine sitting through that ceremony today with Donald Trump, listening to these comments, having defined him the way they had during the campaign?
But let's keep in mind, a lot of that is political, just as we saw Barack
Not from
Obama.
Kelly and Millie, though. You can't say that, surely.
But just remember this: a couple weeks ago, when President Jimmy Carter had his funeral, you had President Obama and former President Trump sitting there talking together and joking. Yet President Obama had called him a fascist. Are you really going to sit there and warmly embrace and joke around with somebody you literally consider to be a fascist? I don't think so. And so a lot of that is for show. It's for political show. Just as I've shared with the two of you that behind the scenes right now, you have had an incoming Trump administration cooperating closely with the State Department and other government agencies for this transition, working for weeks at a time. And as I've seen it, because I've been involved in some of the process, working very well together. But average folks just don't know that. They think there's so much animosity.
Okay, let's go to final thought. I mean, It's been a remarkable day. I will certainly not forget it. You know, Robert and I, over our many decades at ITN, have witnessed various things, but today will stick in the mind, I suspect, for quite a long time for various reasons. He said a lot of things that were the same, we've heard before. He said some things that were different. He talked about ending the weaponization of the justice system, not clear what he means by that exactly. He talked about being a peacemaker and a unifier, not clear exactly what he means by that. But what's your final reflection, both of you, on today and what it presages about the next 4 years?
For me, I would say that MAGA has actually gone mainstream. You would not have thought that 4 years ago, certainly wouldn't have thought that 8 years ago. And I remember when I first entered at the State Department, there was almost the attitude of, y'all will be gone in 4 years, we just have to wait it out. But now there's an acceptance that whether or not you like President Trump, these policies have resonated with an awful lot of Americans who want to see change.
Yeah, I think I share that view as often I do with Heather, whose analysis has been so strong over these last few months. I mean, just, anecdotally, you suddenly realize that people are no longer embarrassed or kind of ashamed to say that they're Trump supporters now. He does have a mandate that is undeniable. Yes, it was a narrow victory in the popular vote, but the fact that he won those 7 swing states, and the fact, most importantly to him, I think personally, psychologically, that he won the popular vote, I think that has transformed the nature of this presidency and makes it very different from his first term. The 47th president is a whole lot more powerful than the 45th, and that in part is because there is no kind of resistance movement. The Democrats are in disarray. It's partly because he never has to face election again, and he has made these sort of grand promises. We'll see if he can keep them. But it is, as we've discussed in the special program, this is an apex predator now who wants to take control of Washington and the country.
Just 2 points to add to that. This Trump administration knows a lot more coming in than it did 8 years ago. So they know how to do this, and they're bringing in people who know how to do the job. Second thought, you'll hear this a lot, America first, America first. I want to be clear, America first does not mean America alone. We still will recognize and embrace our allies and partners. Much of what we do around the world is not possible without them, especially intelligence sharing and military operations. So when you hear America first, it means keep an eye on our taxpayer dollars, on our resources, because frankly, we let a lot of stuff happen here, like an overrunning of our southern border that we should not have, but we will still be involved internationally, I firmly believe.
Okay, I still think Keir Starmer's got some interesting little dilemmas to resolve, but that is a story for another day. Perhaps the analysis of the day. MAGA has gone mainstream. There it is. We need to wrap up there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us. Do hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. But thanks for being with us.